Good afternoon, grade 12s. My name is Tato Adoro, the coordinator for life orientation. Today's session, we will be focusing on preparation for both the controlled test that you will be writing this Friday, as well as the final exam that you will be writing 2 weeks later, that is on the 6th of September. Right, let's look at the structure of the paper. Now, this structure is for both the controlled test as well as the final exam paper. Now, you'll realize that the mark allocation is 100 marks. Throughout the year, as you were preparing for your exam, your final exam, as well as your controlled test, you have been referring to the previous question papers. And you realize that the previous question papers, the mark allocation was out of 80. It is the first time in 2021 where the paper will be out of 100 marks. Now, that should not let you panic. You will see as I go along where the difference is, but basically nothing has changed. The structure is still the same. The only thing that was affected or that has changed is the mark allocation for some questions in section C, and I'll explain later when we get to section C where we deal with it in detail. So first thing, don't be shocked or surprised when you see the paper out of 100, be it the control test or the final exam paper, which we call the CAT. Section A remains 20 marks and it is still compulsory. Section B remains, it used to be 30 marks, but now it is up to 40 marks. Section C is also now up to 40 marks. So previously, it was 20 marks for Section A, 30 marks for Section B, and 30 marks for Section C, which then gave us the total of 80 marks for the paper. So now, as you can see, it is just 10 more marks for Section B as well as 10 more marks for Section C. The structure, like I said, it remains the same in the sense that the questions or the type of questions that will be asked in Section A will still be multiple choice questions, give one word or term questions, as well as short questions where you are just being asked questions and your response are expected to be shorter type of responses. And usually the instruction word or sentence would be answer the following questions, and then the questions would follow. However, in some cases there might also be maybe cartoons that are used, but all of those will be short type of questions. And then Section B, it is compulsory. It will comprise of 2 questions out of 20 marks each, whereas previously it was 2 questions out of 15 marks each. So there will be a little bit more content that will be asked with a little bit more marks that will be added. So that is not a train smash. Same with Section C. 3 questions will be asked, of which you are expected to answer only 2. Remember, when the instruction says answer any 2 questions, and there are 3 questions, as is the case with Section C, you only answer 2. You don't answer all of them, hoping that the teacher will mark all 3 and then take the results of the best 2. That's not how it works. You only answer 2. Should you answer all of them, the teacher will mark the first 2 and the last question will be disregarded. So when you get to Section C, make sure that you choose your 2 questions carefully. You look at all of them and check which one you can score more marks on, which one you understand better, because it's a question of understanding the question and what it wants. So look at which ones you understand better and then choose the 2 that you understand better. And the mark allocation is 40 marks, the total of that section, and each question will count out of 20 marks. Now let's look at the instruction words within the questions. The first step before you answer your questions, you must underline your instruction words, because these instruction words are the ones that are guiding you into how you are expected to respond to those questions. These are the examples of the instruction words within the questions. Your low order questions mention, name or state. Then after you have underlined your question word, you now have to know what that question word requires from you. If it says mention or name or state, remember I said this is the first step. The first step is to underline the instruction words and know what the instruction word expects you to do. Then the second step would be to look at the mark allocation. I'll explain the mark allocation later. Now let's focus on the instruction words. If it says mention, state or name, you know that it requires you to write about something without explaining it or without giving any details. And such questions are usually allocated 1 mark. You would be asked to mention one example or one factor or 1 or 2 or 3, whatever the case might be. You will be then guided by the mark allocation, which I will explain later. If a question says define, it means you must give the exact meaning of the word or give a definition, explain what it is. And usually your definition questions counts out of 2 marks. Discuss is a middle order question. If it says discuss, you have to give a fact and a supporting statement or qualifier, and in this way you will be giving us a well-explained response, because your middle order questions and your high order questions requires you to give well-explained responses. And the minute you see discuss in a question, you must know that in your response to that question, you must have 2 parts to that question. You give a statement, a full statement, not a brief statement, a full statement, and then you explain why you are giving the statement based on the question at hand. Describe. You also there give just an account of something where you basically explaining. When you are describing it, you are giving us an account of what it means. How do you understand that? And that is usually out of 2 marks as well. And again there, it counts out of 2 marks, and you must just make sure that in your description, you give us a fact and you support why you are saying whatever that you are saying. Same with explain. Make it clear. The fact that you are asked to explain, it is saying to you the response must be in such a way that there are no further questions after the statement and the qualifier you have given. That way you'll know that you have explained. But if in your response, the reader of the response or the marker, which is the teacher, is still having questions over and above what you have written as your answer, that simply means you did not explain, because an explanation is close-ended. It requires no further questions, no further elaboration, because it is clear and straight to the fact, and it is understandable. So in your explanation, your response must be understandable. It must be easy to understand. And then your recommend. You give a suggestion or you propose what could be done to either solve a problem as a solution, or maybe to give a hint of what could work in future to solve whatever problem that was at hand. There must be a supporting statement there as well. What impact will your suggestion have, or how will it assist and solve the problem? As you are supporting your statement, you are saying, I'm recommending this so that this can happen. Now, again there, it also depends on the mark allocation. If the mark allocation is 2 marks, then you only need to give 2 parts to that response, which will then be your recommendation or your suggestion, as well as why you are suggesting it, so that it can bear results. Differentiate, it's usually asking you to give the difference between 2 things, and that will also depend on the mark allocation, whether it's 2 marks or it's 4 marks. But again, like I said, each time in a middle order question or high order question in life orientation, which are mostly in section B and section C, whenever you see 2 marks for a question, you must know that that question requires a fact and a qualifier. You cannot just mention or state or give short, brief answers. You must elaborate and explain and reason and make it understandable to the reader or to the marker. Evaluation. An evaluation, you give your own opinion. However, you give evidence to support that opinion. So, in other words, whatever judgment that you will be making, it must be based on facts. And we all know that facts are facts. A statement and a fact are two different things. So, when you're doing your evaluation and you're giving your own opinion, there must be facts in whatever that you are saying so that you can support that opinion. Assess, you're making a judgment that you justify by giving your reasons. You are assessing the situation, and then you are also giving us the reasons why you say, this is my assessment, this is my analysis of the situation at hand. Why this is happening, I think it is because of this and that. You are giving us reasons. This is now how I am assessing it. Suggest or propose, almost like you are recommending. You give possible reasons or ideas or solutions. And again there, like I said, you must give a fact or a statement which you also qualify for the second mark of the question. Identification. You have to name or recognize something within the context of what the question is asking. So grade 12s, these instruction words are extremely important. There is no way that you will be able to give correct and relevant responses to your questions if you do not understand these instructions. You must make sure that in each question you underline these words so that as you attempt to respond, you keep on referring back to the question and the instruction words that you underlined so that you figure out whether you are answering according to the depth of the question, and also you are making sure that you are answering what you are being asked. Common mistakes made by learners. Usually they don't answer what they are being asked. And as a result, they give irrelevant responses. And the reason for that is due to the fact that they do not take time to understand these instruction words. So just be careful when you get to your planning of your responses. And may I please remind you, grade 12s, that the controlled test that you'll be writing on Friday, as well as the final exam, constitutes 40% of your final year mark. You already have marks for your physical education, you already have marks for your source-based tasks, you already have marks for your project. Now these are the last two, and the weighting for these two is the same. They weigh the same. So just make sure that you do well in this so that when everything is added up after the 6th of September, you have a good mark. Examples of questions. In section A, you might get questions like name any three or something, or name the factors, or name the reasons, or mention the reasons, or outline, for that matter, outline three reasons why there is a high rate of unemployment in our country, if I can use that example. So those are some of the examples, like discuss 2 exam writing skills, define the term unemployment, define the term discrimination, define the term violation of human rights, something like that. State, name, give 2 reasons for, like I said, maybe high rate of unemployment, evaluate what are the consequences of late application of admission to higher institution of higher learning, such questions. Suggest how learners can ensure that they secure a place at institution of higher learning, for an example. Recommend 2 habits that they can develop that will help them to do well in the exam. These are just examples what I'm saying now, because remember, life orientation content is really practical, and it's things that are around us as per the content that you have dealt with in your classroom. So I'm just giving examples. And remember, with the life orientation question paper, it's not like other subjects where when you are using the past exam paper, some of the questions might be asked exactly as they appear on those question papers from the past. It is not the case with life orientation, because what we are assessing here is critical thinking skills more than knowledge. There is a bit of knowledge, but we are assessing how are you applying that knowledge in real life situations. Hence, there cannot be a definite question that will say this one will definitely be asked or stands a better chance of being asked. No, which is why we are having this exercise now of assisting you in how to approach a life orientation question paper. Differentiate between maybe volunteering and community work, or it can be differentiate between any 2 concepts in the content. Describe any content in any content or any concepts in your content. So the paper overall, the weighting will be as follows. Low order questions will constitute 30% across the paper. A middle order will constitute 40% across the paper. High order questions will constitute 30% across the paper. So as you can see, the middle order questions weigh more than both low order and high order questions. So it is not to say section B is only middle order questions and section C is only high order questions. No, the cognitive levels, these 3 cognitive levels, will be across the whole paper. So I just make sure that your middle order and your high order questions, which then will be guided by the mark allocation, as you will see just now when I explain, just make sure that you scoop marks there. Now, how to answer section B and even section C questions. In section B, you will be instructed to write in full sentences. So make sure that as you respond to these middle order and high order questions, your responses are in full sentences. Make sure you answer all the questions and you are guided by the mark allocation, like I said. This will help you to not write too much or even too little as expected by the question. Let's look at this example. The mark allocation would say 2 times 2 equals 4. And immediately that says to you, in that question, for you to accumulate 4 marks, you must write 2 full statements with their 2 explanations, which we also refer to as qualifiers, because now you must give a well-explained response. Like I broke it down there, statement will be 1 mark, and the qualifier or the motivating statement will be the 2nd mark. That will give you your first 2 marks within the 2. So 2 times 2 equals 4. It means there are 2 responses that you must give with their 2 motivation or motivating statements. That's how you'll get the 4 marks. And sometimes the mistake that the learners do or make is that they will, if it says 2 times 2, 4 marks, they will give us 4 statements thinking that they will get 4 marks. What then happens is that the teacher will mark the first 2 statements and disregard the last 2. And then the teacher will cross out and write exceeded the number of required responses, ENRR. each time you see that abbreviation ENRR and a line or 2 lines in between, you must just know that the reason is that even regardless of whether the responses are correct, but you have given more than you were asked, because 2 times 2 means 2 statements and their 2 motivations, those 2 specific statements. So we see that often when we do moderation. Just be careful of that. Let me give you an example of the 2 marks question. For an example, in your source-based task, there was a question that said, explain how Siki can adapt his lifestyle to spend more time on his studies. And the mark allocation in that question was 2 times 2 equals 4, exactly like in the example above. So now how you were expected to answer. The first response, Siki can reduce the time that he spends on social media. That's a fact. You get 1 mark for that. Now the motivation. Why are we saying that? As that will allow time to attend classes, the 2nd mark. So if you only have this 1 response, then you shall have gotten 2 marks out of 4. But if you go on to give the 2nd response, because the mark allocation said 2 times 2, meaning 2 answers and each answer equals 2 marks, and in the 2 marks, this is how you are supposed to break down your answer. The 2nd response, avoid allowing gigs to be on top of his priority list. You get a mark for that because it's a fact or a statement, so that he will be well rested to concentrate in class, the 2nd mark. Now, by saying these 2 bullets, these 2 answers, then you get your 4 marks out of 4. Another example could be, Siki must refrain from frequenting pubs or gigs and avoid other instructions, a tick, okay, so that he will have more time for his studies. Now, let's look at this last bullet, the 3rd bullet. Now, some learners, in their responses to these type of questions, which says 2 times 2, the learner will then say, Siki must refrain from frequenting pubs and avoid other distractors, full stop. When the teacher marks that, the teacher is not going to mark 1 mark, to give a mark after Siki must refrain from frequenting pubs and gigs 1 and avoid other instructions another mark. No. Understand that that is 1 fact. It's a fact which still needs to be elaborated on for you to get the 2nd mark. So this is also a common mistake that some learners do. They would write a statement and another statement in a sentence as 1 sentence, thinking that they have said 2 things, therefore it warrants them 2 marks. And that is not how the marks are allocated in life orientation. So just be careful of that as well. And now let's look at how to answer section C questions. Like I said, you will be asked 3 questions and you will be expected to answer only 2. Please do only answer 2, like I said previously. Read through all the 3 questions before you decide which one is the best combination. Only the first 2 will be marked, like I said. Your response must be in a form of paragraphs. You must write in full sentences, no brief responses. You will lose marks. And as much as it is a long type of question or it's an essay, you don't have to write an introduction. You don't have to write a conclusion, because no marks will be awarded for those. You won't be given marks for introduction. You won't be given marks for conclusion. Just stick to the bullets in the questions. There must be paragraphs. Each question bullet must be answered in a new paragraph to make it easy for the marker, the teacher who will be marking you, to see which responses are for which questions, because there are bullets in those questions of section C. The first bullet must have its own paragraph. When you move on to the next answer or the next question, which is the next bullet, you must skip a line and then write a new paragraph where you are responding. Moving on to the next bullet, you must also skip a line so that there is a clear distinction of which responses are for which questions. So the teacher must not fumble around trying to figure out what are you responding to now. It must be as clear as being divided into those paragraphs as per the bullets that were asked. An example there, again, is the same as what I explained previously or in the previous section. You must look at the mark allocation. Again, remember, you always start with underlying your instructions so that you understand what the question is asking. And furthermore, in the instructions, there are keywords to the questions, the main focus of the question. For an example, the instruction might be discuss how unemployment rate can be reduced in our country, or discuss the reasons for the high rate of unemployment. Now, you have your underlined instruction word, which is discuss. What is it that I am asked to discuss? You look for that in the sentence. Then you underline it. In the case of what I have just given as an example now, you were asked to discuss the reasons. So in that question, after you have underlined the discuss, because now you know you are expected to discuss, you can't just mention, you must discuss. Now, what are you discussing? You underline the reasons. And again, you ask yourself, the reasons for what? You continue in that question sentence. Reasons for high rate of unemployment, you underline. Then you start answering your question. And as you are answering, keep on going back to the question. Am I still relevant? Am I still answering what I'm being asked? So that you don't fumble, because the nice thing with life orientation, it's easy for a learner or for anyone to get carried away by their responses, because the content is so interlinked. Because you are being asked, for an example, to give examples of the reasons, you might be tempted to talk about the corruption in our country, why people are suffering so much, why are people unemployed, all the things that are happening in our country that we are all aware of. But at that point in time, that's not what the question is asking you. So make sure that you stick to, because you might get carried away. Some of you still have issues that you feel as you are watching as citizens. You feel like, but this is how the government could deal with this and this issue. And now, given the chance in a life orientation paper, you might find yourself venting out those frustrations, unaware that you are really not answering the question at hand. Much as you might be correct and have valid points, however, that is not what you are being asked at that point in time. So you'll be surprised when you get your paper back and you realize that you got the answers wrong. So just be careful of that. Now, the difference in the questioning in section C. Some questions might be out of 3 marks. Now, for the first time in 2021, because of the mark allocation that is being upped to, the total mark for the exam that is being upped to 100, you might find that some questions might even be out of 4 marks. Now, I'm saying this to you now. Just expect such questions, especially in the final exam. Well, in the test, it's fine. You will still get your 3 marks questions because it's a test. The depth will not be as much as in the final September exam. But in the final September exam, be ready for those questions with a mark allocation out of 4 in each response, because this information is included in the 2021 exam guidelines. Now, the fact that it is included in the 2021 exam guidelines, it means that there's a high possibility that there will be such questions in the final September exam. So just be on the lookout for such questions. Let's see how we approach such questions. For example, 2 times 3, it means you must have 2 statements, and each statement must have a qualifier, and the third part, which will warrant you an extra mark, which is the third mark, you must give an outcome or a conclusion or a result of whatever statement that you have given us. Let's look at the example. Recommend 2 practical strategies that the media could introduce to discourage unsafe sexual behavior among the youth. In each answer, also indicate how each strategy could promote healthy sexual behavior. Now, the first step, you underline the instruction word. What is the instruction word in this sentence? Recommend. You are asked to recommend. Recommend what? Practical strategies that the media can use to discourage unsafe. So the key words here, over and above the instruction word, which is to recommend, is practical strategies that can be used by the media to do what? To discourage what? Unsafe sexual behavior amongst the youth. Now, once you have those keywords underlined as well as your instruction word, the second step, you now go to the mark allocation. It says 2 times 3, and the total for this question is 6 marks. This 2 means you must give 2 responses. In each response that you will be giving, there must be 3 parts to those responses. What are the 3 parts? A statement or a fact, a qualifier, and an outcome or conclusion. So that will count 1, 2, 3 marks. But you must have 2 such responses. Therefore, you will then have 6 marks in total. So the mistake that learners do there again, they do not give the 3 parts. You might find that in their response, they only have 2 statements and 1 qualifier. Then they get 3 marks. Or they have 1 statement and a qualifier and an outcome only. Then they only get 3 marks. Regardless of how much they have written, be it in a half a page type of a response, but as we read through that half a page and we can only find a statement, a qualifier, and an outcome, you will then get only 3 marks out of 6. So you can't go back to the teacher and say, but ma'am, I wrote half a page and out of 6 marks you only gave me 3 marks. No, that's not how it works. If in the half a page there's only 1 statement, there's a fact and another fact and another fact and another fact, such that there are even 5 facts or 5 statements without the statements being qualified or being elaborated on or being explained, then you will only have 1. And the teacher will write, exceeded the number of required responses. So you'll find that there's a half a paragraph to that question. But in the half a paragraph, only 1 mark is given. And the rest of the paragraph is crossed out, and in between the abbreviation ENRR. Then you must know that you did not follow the instruction. The instruction said, or the mark allocation, you did not respond according to the depth of the mark allocation. So mark allocation, extremely important. So if you can forget anything that I'm saying this afternoon, just keep in mind those two tips that I gave you. 1, underlining the instructional words and the keywords in the sentence, the first step. The second step, looking at the mark allocation and knowing how much you are expected to write and in which depth. Now the expected response for the 2 times 3. Let's look at, out of the 2, the first 3, where will it come from? The first response out of the 2 responses as per this 2 times 3 could be, the media could place stronger restrictions on the printing or posting or airing of explicit pictures or statements or scenes. That's a fact. 1 mark. Now I'm qualifying that fact. So why? So that young people may not be exposed. May not be exposed to provocative material, the second mark. Do you understand what's happening there? I have given the statement which is a fact. What is it that can be done? I'm recommending that the media can do to make sure that they discourage unsafe sexual behavior among the youth. If there are restrictions on whatever that is printed on the media, that is printed or posted or airing, there must be some sort of restrictions, 1 mark, so that this cannot expose learners to this sensitive material that is provocative, that might encourage the behavior, provoke them or tempt them to follow whatever that they see on the printed or the pictures or the scenes on TV that they are seeing. The last part of that response, what will the result be if this recommendation that I'm saying, because of how I am explaining it, which is the second part, my motivation, what will the result be? And in this way, they may not be influenced into thinking that such behavior is the norm or is acceptable. Can you see now I'm giving the conclusion or the outcome, the result. This, what I am recommending, because of the reason that I am giving, will bring these results. That's where the third mark is coming from. So there I have my 3 marks. Now I must go on to the second response because I was asked to give 2 responses. The same style. As I am saying now a different fact. Again, be careful of repeating the responses. Some learners will say exactly the same thing but in different ways. But when you look at it, it's exactly the same as the previous response. So then you will not get marks for repetition of facts. Make sure that it's a totally different effect that you are giving now the second time around, so that you can get yourself another 3 marks, which will then equal 6 marks of the total mark for the question. Now, let's look at in the case where the mark allocation might be 2 times 4 as per the 2021 exam guidelines. So if a question comes, exactly the same question, but now the mark allocation is different, is 2 times 4, then there must be 4 parts in the answer. There must be a statement, the explanation of that statement, the qualifier, as well as the outcome. Now let's work on it. Place stronger restrictions. The media could place stronger restrictions on the printing or posting or airing of explicit pictures or statements or scenes. It's a fact. Why? As they might provoke, these pictures, explicit pictures, might provoke improper sexual activities or behavior in general. Can you see? That is the second mark. I explained why I'm saying that. This will ensure that now this is now the outcome, the qualifier actually. This will ensure that young people are not exposed to provocative material, the third mark. And the conclusion is that in this way, or the outcome, in this way, they may not be influenced into thinking that such behavior is the norm or is acceptable. Can you see there are 4 parts? I have a statement, I explain the statement, I qualify, and then I give the outcome. Okay, why I'm saying the statement is my explanation. And then I qualify that explanation. I'm elaborating more on that explanation. And then I give the outcome. That is 4 marks. So be on the lookout for these type of questions, especially in the final CAT exam, which you'll be writing beginning of next month. Section C, there's a high possibility that you will have such questions. And now this is how you will break it down in order for you to get the 8 marks. Now let's look at the general tips. Section B and Section C, the total is 80 marks out of 100. So pay special attention to these questions. Now, one other thing that you must remember at the back of your minds, grade 12s, Now you have actually started with your end of the year results, grade 12 results. Why am I saying that? Remember, with life orientation, these are the 2 last formal assessments that you are writing. And after the 6th of September next month, your mark for life orientation, which will then be reflected on your final grade 12 certificate, shall have been completed. Now, what mark are you supposed to aim at? Remember the pass requirements. Out of your 7 subjects, you are allowed to pass 6 subjects. What I'm explaining now is a basic pass. In order for you to make sure that you stand a good chance of passing grade 12 this year, you aim for, before I can even start talking quality, remember, you can either get a certificate, which is usually like just a school leaving certificate, or you can get a diploma pass, or you can get a bachelor pass. So now, just to pass, for us to say you did not fail grade 12 in 2021, you passed. You must pass 3 subjects at 40%, one of which must be home language. And you must pass 3 subjects at 30%, and you may fail the 7th subject. I'm talking basic pass. I'm not encouraging that you must fail the 7th subject, just the basic pass. I'm explaining how you can just make sure that you at least pass grade 12. So now, the 3 subjects at 40%, we usually say target your easy subjects. Your home language is easy. You can easily get 40%. And remember, it's a must. You must get 40% in your home language. Other 2 subjects at 40%, target the easy subjects. Let at least life orientation be one of them. Maybe your English or your other subject. That is now, I'm giving you tips on how you can guarantee that you at least pass grade 12. So what that is saying to you is that for life orientation, you do not aim for less than 40%. Because in so doing, you are making sure that you are guaranteed to pass. You are bettering your chances of passing, because if you can pocket 40% of LO now, it means you are left with home language 40% and 1 other easy subjects at 40%, and the other 3 can be 30% and you can fail 1. Now we are sure that you have passed. Right. So let us not aim for anything less than 40% in life orientation. Plan each answer before you start writing. Like I said, your planning stage is what I have just directed you with the previous questions, where I say you must underline so that you make sure that you are answering what you are being asked. Make sure that you answer what you are asked. Sometimes you might hope that this question, I feel like they like they like asking counteracting unemployment, for an example. In most of the previous papers, I've seen that counteracting unemployment or labor laws, they like asking labor laws. Now you are hopeful that labor laws will be asked. And you might be misled by the way the labor laws were asked. And when you come across a question within the content of labor laws, now you start answering as per the question papers that you practiced with. No. Just make sure that you answer what is there, not what you hoped for. Your handwriting is very important. Remember, in life orientation, yes, you are going to be marked by your teachers, but we also have external moderation. We have a DBE moderation. We also have Umalusi moderation. So just make sure that any moderator can read your script. We also have centralized marking in life orientation. And in some centralized marking centers, the teachers swap the scripts. The teachers are not allowed to mark their own learner scripts at those centralized marking. So your school might be sampled as one of the schools that will be participating in centralized marking, where now your paper will not be marked by your teacher, the teacher who is familiar with your handwriting. It will be a completely different teacher, and there will be so many scripts there such that there will not be time for people to go back and check what did this learner or what was he or she trying to say. Do you understand? So make sure that your handwriting is legible. use all the time available. Often learners tend to rush into finishing the exam so that they can get free time and go out of the exam room. Remember, this is the last time in your entire life you will be writing this paper, and any exam paper for that matter. So these general tips that I'm giving is not only for life orientation, even for other subjects. The exams that you will be writing this year are your final exams of grade 12. So make sure that you make use of the time. If the paper says 2.5 hours, be sure to use the full 2.5 hours. Our paper this year is out of 100 marks, and the time allocation or the duration is 2.5 hours. In the past, it used to be 2 hours because the total mark was 80 marks of the paper. So this year it's 2.5. Be sure to use the full 2.5 hours. What does it mean? It means after responding and answering all the questions, and you still have time, sit in there and go back to all your questions, and now start marking yourself silently. So you're checking your responses. The question asked that, did I respond to the question? Because you still have time and no one is chasing you out. There's no exam rule that says as soon as you are done, you must go out. No. It's your time that you have been given. Make use of it. I've already spoken about practicing past exam papers. These are just to guide you, just to familiarize yourself with the type of questions that are asked in formal assessment. It is not to say the very same questions will be asked, especially in life orientation. They are just there to guide you, and both the question paper as well as the memo. The past question papers were circulated to all schools. You should be having them, and you should be having the memos as well. If you do not have a memo for the question papers or the questions that you were given as part of informal activities in your classroom, but you did not get the memo for that, go back to your teacher and ask for the memo. The teachers do have the memos, because that memo will be guiding you on how you are expected to respond in such type of questions. So they are just there to help you or to familiarize yourself or familiarize you with the questioning style. What should I do if my mind goes blank mid-answer? You reread your answer to see if this will help you remember. So in other words, you just make sure that the reason why my mind is blank now could be I'm not understanding what the question is asking. Now let me take my time and make sure that I go back to those keywords in the sentence, in the question. I go back to the instruction and I understand. Calm down, just calm down. And that might help you to get back in the right mindset, and as a result be able to respond or to start thinking. What if you run out of time? Do not panic. Look at how many questions you are still left, and then work out how much time you still have left with you. You will probably gain the most marks if you try to answer the questions that you know best, rather than wasting your time with the answers that you don't have responses to or that are tricky for you. If you have lots more ideas and you are reluctant to move on, try jotting down these in pencil so that you can return to the question later on, because you want to save time. If you know you always tend to run out of time in exams, perhaps you know that you are a bit slow when it comes to finishing your exam writing in time, then it is a good idea to practice before the time. You take a full paper that you haven't seen before. You can go to the website. We have a website. If you don't have, or maybe if you have exhausted the past exam papers that your teacher gave you, you can go to the website and check for other question papers from other provinces, for an example. Take that paper, sit with it in front of you, give yourself 2 hours or 2.5 hours, and start answering the questions and see how far you go and where can you improve. That will help a lot. Make sure you are clear about how many questions you need to answer, like I said, when it comes to Section B and Section C questions. You are guided by the mark allocation. Sometimes the questions themselves will specify, will quantify the answer. It will say, give 3 recommendations, or suggest 4 things, or mention 5. So just be sure that you are clear how many responses you must give. If questions are divided into multiple sub-questions, check whether you have to answer any one of the sub-questions or all of them. Like for an example in section C, as I explained earlier. And again, make sure that you check the back of your paper to make sure that you have answered all the papers. If you do not see the total mark of the whole question, it means there might be questions at the back. So some schools will print the questions back to back in the case of the controlled test. Some would just print maybe one page, one-sided. The question paper might be one-sided. But if it's the question of the final September exam, then it will be back to back, but be sure to go up until you see the total mark out of 100. Then you will know that you have seen all the questions on the paper and you have responded to all of them. So with that being said, I wish you all the best, grade 12s, as you are starting now to shape your results, as you are starting to shape your end of the year statement of results for grade 12 2021. Life orientation is the beginning of it all. After these 2 tasks or assessments, then your mark for life orientation will be ready. It will be ready to be printed onto your final statement of results or your matric certificate. The other thing that I want to mention, some of you might have not submitted the project. Some of you might not have written the source-based task in term 1. Be sure to go back to your teacher and beg for mercy so that you are given a second chance to write. You cannot get 0 out of 90 for the source-based because you chose not to write it. You cannot get 0 out of 90 for the project because you did not hand it in. We are talking 90 plus 90, 180 marks out of 400. Better still, even if it's only 1. We are talking 90 marks. You can't get 0. You can't lose 90 marks out of 400. So you are setting yourself for failure. Go back to the teacher, beg for mercy, apologize for not handing in, and ask to be given a second chance and write it so that your mark can be finalized and be ready to be added onto your final grade 12 statement of results. Remember, I always say to the learners when I talk to them, the grade 12 certificate is the most important certificate in the sense that in future, wherever you will be applying for, the first certificate when the employment requirements say, or the advert says, your academic qualifications, the first statement that you are expected to produce is your grade 12 certificate. You can't jump to your diploma certificate or your degree, your degree certificate or your honors or your masters. Even if you can study up until you get your PhD and you are Dr. So-and-so, and now you are applying for a promotional post somewhere, you must still produce your grade 12 certificate. So how nice will it be if you like what you see on it? So all the best, grade 12. Grade 12s, God bless you. Thank you.